dessert, or I didn't chase them like Paul quite fast enough. Hey man, how are you?
You
Nice
okay?
to see you, man. You coming joining us?
Yeah, I'm going to join you for a bit.
Wonderful. Wonderful. It was worth waiting a minute. Okay. What can we do with the door? Should we leave
I'll leave
the door?
it open. Might get
Leave
some
the door.
latecomers. Yeah,
so
yeah,
we're equally welcoming.
If I put
right?
my instructor voice on, everyone will hear me.
Oh, that's true. Instructor voice. Oh, he's going to come and join us and sit down now.
Yay.
Oh, nice. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Afternoon, everybody. First of all, thank you for still being here. Right. 1, it's a Friday. 2, it's storm, whatever it is. 3, it's the second day of a conference. We did have fears we'd be talking to an empty room. So thank you for being here. Hopefully it will be worth your while the next 40 minutes or so.
Yeah.
I'll try to keep 40 minutes, I promise. The good thing is you don't have to hear too much from me, because my role in this is very much a facilitator. To give you some background as to why or how this conversation started, in those of you, there is some familiarity in this room. I know some faces I don't think I've spoke to before. So a quick introduction for me. My name is Simon Wilkinson. I'm head of fitness sales for TANITA in Europe. And due to the nature of us being the providers of body composition analysis, the conversation with our partners, our customers, our potential customers around GLP-1 medication and their members has accelerated significantly in the last 6 months or so. Body composition is obviously crucial, or understanding of body composition really crucial to that process. And our customers, our partners have been leaning on us for questions, for advice, and for support. And I do, with zero sense of humour, I do have some letters after my name. But I am very much a sales guy. I am the commercial guy for TANITA. What I am not is an expert in this subject. I'm not an expert in behaviour change. So what do? We find and we speak with experts. And myself and Lou first had a conversation months and months and months ago, because Lou was also trying to speak with gym owners and gym operators to understand your challenges around GLP-1 and the impact and questions and advice and support required for members. So I can open lots of doors. I can bring lots of gyms and gym owners to a conversation, and Lou then has that expert knowledge in which we can provide some support. And what we want to do is try and provide some structured support. So a framework, some official guidance that as a gym operator, particularly an independent gym operator, where it's you and your team, you haven't got layers and layers and layers of management and consultants and advisors. And what do you do then? Who can you lean on then? This guidance will hopefully be supportive and useful for you moving forward. And to put that in place and for it to be as impactful as possible, we want to hear from gym owners. So we've been interviewing some gym owners. We've had some webinars with some gym owners. And this is now not the final opportunity, but a great opportunity to share some information with you guys that haven't been part of that process. I know 1 or 2 in the room have. But also to gather some thoughts and information from the 4 or 5 in the room who haven't been part of that process. So to do a bit of a better introduction than I did, and just to start talking us through, please, Lou, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for being here. We really do appreciate it on this very wet Friday afternoon. So yeah, just as a quick introduction to me, so my background is both across fitness and behavioural science, health psychology, behaviour change. And so I've been a fitness professional for over 25 years now, and have worked in this sector in various capacities across that whole time. But I'm also, as I said, a behavioural scientist, and I've dedicated the last sort of 17 years or so to trying to understand how people engage with health-related behaviours, specifically those associated with obesity and weight management, and of course, because I'm a fitness person as well, physical activity is the sort of primary behaviour as well. So Yeah, my interest in this this topic was peaked as soon as GLP-1 started to become licensed and available as a primary treatment for obesity. And yeah, having conversations with huge operators and having conversations with independent operators is so informative in terms of how the fitness sector can play a really important part in making these drugs be a success story. So we'll delve into that in more detail. I should say John is not just here for eye candy.
Yes. Sorry, John.
Although he does that job excellently. But yeah, we're going to keep the intrigue going to keep you interested as to why John is here, and we'll make sure we give him an opportunity to speak in a little bit. So thank you for joining us, John. So yeah, let's just start by setting the scene and setting the context. And this is actually a quote from Peter, who's not in the room. Check in, who contributed to one of our online sessions. And I absolutely love this quote. I think it really captures where we're at with this at the moment. GLP-1 is both the biggest threat, benefit, and evolutionary change that the fitness industry will face in a generation. It will and has already started to fundamentally change almost everything about weight loss. So if you've already been thinking about this and have some experience of this will probably ring true in some way. If it's not been on your radar up until now, then this is why it should be, because it is a sort of seismic shift. And why is it so important? Why do we care about this new drug? Well, it's because around 2/3 of the UK adult population are living with excess weight or obesity. So it's a highly prevalent condition and a highly complex condition. In terms of uptake of GLP-1s, a quick picture at the start of 2025, a sort of really representative household survey of GLP-1s indicated over 1.5 million adults were already taking it just for weight loss. So bear in mind, there are lots of people who are prescribed this for diabetes and other conditions, but this is for a primary condition of weight loss, with an estimation of over 3 million more interested in doing so in the next 12 months. So we're looking at probably by the end of next year, somewhere between 4 and 5 million adults will have or are currently taking GLP-1 for obesity. It's huge. Now within that, because the NHS is not a bottomless pit, as I'm very unfortunately aware, 90% of current GLP-1 users are paying out of pocket. So they're not getting this through the NHS, again, for weight loss. They are paying for it themselves. And the vast majority of those are getting it through an online provider. So if you haven't already, and I'm sure most of you haven't felt the need to look at this, but if you just Google GLP-1 provider, you'll get a list of places of varying quality who are still licensed. This is not the black market. These are legally providing GLP-1s, but they are online providers. So although the clinical guidance for these drugs and how they were tested in clinical trials and showed to be effective is that the prescription has to be combined with guidance on diet and physical activity alongside that medication, the reality is what most users get is some kind of generic information. And I'm not slagging off digital, I'm a big fan of digital health, but it's probably a website or a fairly basic app or a leaflet or something like that. It's not tailored, it's not personalised, and it's not listening to that individual user. So we have a situation with lots of people using a drug, not getting the wraparound support that they should be getting. And for me, as someone who's worked in this sector for a quarter of a century now, I know we've got fitness providers out there who have the facilities and have a great workforce who could offer this support that most users aren't getting. And then from an independent sector point of view, what independent operators have going for them is that local knowledge and the ability to build communities, which is super, super important in terms of any sort of behaviour change intervention. And as I said, I'm talking to operators of all different sizes, and currently the big chains are moving at the pace they normally change at, which is at that of an oil tanker, okay? There's a lot of layers to go through, and they're all looking at it, but nobody is being radical and innovative in those larger operators. So I think there's a massive opportunity for the independent sector to be the innovators, as they often are. So as Simon mentioned, we've already done some information gathering, which is, part of the reason why John is here. He's going to speak to his experience specifically, but we've spoken to around about 10 operators so far. Now we've got you guys in the room. We're going to get your feedback as well, and we want to continue this process. But really, we wanted to try and understand it from the operator's perspective. And here's a brief outline of what we were told, some of the key challenges. So first of all, what operators were telling us is that members are saying, oh, I don't need to come anymore because I can get the jabs. So they're seeing exercise and GLP-1s as an either or, whereas actually, again, if you look at all of the science says you should do both together. So there's a big challenge because you're going to potentially lose members to GLP-1s. We know they're not cheap. And so often there's going to be that decision-making process as well. And the reason they see they're choosing the GLP-1 version over the gym version is because they want instantaneous results. This is what the operators are saying. Again, that's the feedback they're getting. What we're also seeing, and this is very much reflected in the wider literature around the experience of GLP-1 users, is certainly in that very initial phase of starting the medication, people have very low energy because they're not eating very much, and they all experience side effects. This is not an easy option if you haven't looked into this at all. The side effects are real and they are significant, and lots of people drop out as a result of those side effects. So when you're feeling nauseous, you might have constipation or diarrhea, or you might be going between the two, you feel bloated, you're not eating enough to get you through your day, exercise is coming very, very, very low down on your list. We're also seeing, again, we see this across the literature as well, in that there's still a big stigma around this because it is seen as cheating, or it's seen as the easy way out. So members are not telling their gym or their trainer or their instructor that they're using GLP-1s, and the operators were telling us, well, that sucks for us because we actually are here to support those members, but we can't if we don't know they're using it. Of course, expertise and knowledge is lacking because it's such a new thing. So again, operators are saying, look, I want my staff to be educated on this, but how do we do that? How do we keep them up to date? Because it's rapidly evolving. And also, John was definitely one of the people we spoke to who strongly talked about how the GLP-1 users don't understand the drugs themselves in any great detail. They don't understand the importance of exercise, how exercise contributes, and of nutrition as well. We are seeing lots of users who, because of the side effects, because of the effects of the drugs, yes, they're losing weight, yes, they're eating less, but they're potentially not getting the right nutrition, and they're potentially not exercising in the way we would like to. And of course, operators also mentioned about abuse, and any drug is going to be abused. And what we see with GLP-1s is a combination of people using it as a quick fix. So, I'm going on holiday next month, I'll have a jab, and I'll get into a lower dress size. And people who are involved in aesthetic-based sports, physique-based sports, using it to cut, using it to get super, super lean, which is not the intention of those drugs. So a big, long list of challenges, some opportunities, which is where I start to get excited because I always try to look for the opportunities. So really, where operators have seen people use the drugs and be really successful with it, getting significant weight loss, feeling fantastic, as a result of that weight loss, life-changing effects of these drugs. And if you were at the session yesterday, it was really, really great always to hear from people who've used them, talking about how it's changed their life for the better, even though it may not have been an easy journey. Also, the potential to attract new members and to provide new services for this specific marketplace. So we've seen millions of people out there potentially open to, okay, I'm on a health journey of some description, so maybe this gym, this operator, this provider could be part of that journey, and maybe appealing to people who wouldn't have traditionally walked through the door. But I would say the feedback we've had so far on balance is there's probably a bit of a net negative at the moment. So probably losing more members than they're gaining right now, and some potential there for, again, people choosing where to put their money and not necessarily putting it into where we would like them to. So before we get John's perspective, so that's the operator perspective, I wanted to have my 2 cents. As I said, I've spent 20 years in this field, and I wanted to share the sort of overview from a more of a, umbrella, population health and science point of view. So first of all, as I said, there's a great source of excitement. For me, having done an awful lot of research with people who've lived with obesity for the last 2 decades, what GLP-1 users talk about is how it releases them from the insatiable appetite that they've experienced their whole life, that they thought was just who they were and that it could never be changed. Release from the food noise, the constant thinking about food 24/7. Hope, because previously they've tried everything else. They've tried the diets, they've tried the exercise, they've tried the medical support, and they were at the point of hopelessness. Nothing works for me. Now there's something new to try, and it's given them hope. And the increased self-confidence. So, we see in studies that are done of people, they talk about how they feel more inclined to try new things now because of this experience they've had. Also, from a pure health point of view, if you look through the clinical trial data, we're now seeing the benefits of GLP-1s in a huge range of health conditions, chronic conditions. Anything from Alzheimer's and dementia to kidney disease to any sort of cardiometabolic disease. I've done a lot of work with women who have PCOS. This is an absolute game changer for them as well. Any sort of inflammatory disease, so we're looking at things like arthritis. These drugs are showing beneficial effects on a wide range of health conditions. So we've got to start to think about this as a health intervention, not a weight intervention. And a lot of people, as I said, talk about the GLP-1s as being able to start a journey that they wouldn't have started without that towards a healthier lifestyle. What worries me? A whole bunch of things. First, I mentioned it earlier, adherence. So actually, we're getting a lot of people, like we say, millions of people, they're all finding the money, they're going to the online provider, they're trying it, and a huge chunk of them, more than half of them, are dropping out before 12 weeks. That's not long enough to get a clinical benefit. It increases that likelihood of a yo-yo effect. So after they've been off it again for 12 weeks, maybe they'll go back on it again. Maybe it won't be as bad this time. Maybe I'll try a slightly different formulation. So we can get this sort of rebounding. But fundamentally, if you don't stay on the drug long enough to get the clinical benefits, it's not an effective drug. And most of that is due to side effects. Post-treatment. Again, if you've looked at any of the stats, we know in the clinical trials, 2/3 of the people who were successful in the clinical trials then regained at least some weight 1 year after they ceased the treatment. So this isn't a permanent solution. And again, we're going to get some yo-yoing for lots of people if we don't figure that bit out. There's a huge amount of myths and misconceptions around the drugs. Again, we get this sort of stigma associated with it. But also, as John pointed out, lots of people are going on it without doing their own research and really figuring it out. It's, Kathy down the road did it, she looks great, she feels great, I want a piece of that action. They're not considering that this is a really powerful drug. But also, I think particularly in the fitness sector, we're still getting a lot of pushback in terms of, well, why don't you just do the exercise and wait for it to pay off? Lack of research evidence. I'm a scientist, and I'm hearing a lot of noise around the downsides of these drugs that are not backed up by the evidence. I'm not saying that it isn't true. What I'm saying is we don't have the evidence to show it yet. There's a really great research stream, a group of researchers out in the US who just got funded by the US government to do really important pieces of work around looking at the long-term effects and how things like exercise, resistance training, nutrition could make a difference. But let's not jump the shark. Let's wait until we've got that evidence. Users are not the same. Again, I'm hearing, a lot of like, oh, these people have never walked in through your door before. Well, that actually isn't true. And you'll see at the end of this talk, there's a QR code for a free guide that you can download that I wrote, where I break down 4 sort of user profiles. And actually, most people probably will have tried a gym or an exercise program before. And we need to think about what journey they've been on prior to this to be able to make sure we give them the right support. And mostly what concerns me is that we, if you pardon my French, F it up as a sector, And the biggest thing for me at the moment is that the key message I'm hearing within the sector as a way to get GLP-1 users through the door is around strength training. And I understand that. I understand where it comes from. It comes from the clinical data that shows a huge amount of muscle loss when you lose weight rapidly. It's always been the same. If you lose it rapidly with bariatric surgery or very low-calorie diets, it's not unique to GLP-1s, and it is something we should be concerned about. But the biggest mistake we could make at this point in time is for that to be our only selling point, for a number of reasons. One is they've already developed a drug that will help to preserve muscle mass while you're losing weight. Okay, another pill I can take and I don't have to go to the gym. Brilliant. So that argument is going to go away. Retraglide. I'll find it for you.
You might be able to get hold of that right now.
Yeah. It's not officially licensed,
No, not yet.
but you can get hold of it.
Okay.
It's licensed in, exactly. It's licensed in other, yeah.
What does GLP stand for? I know about Wegovy, Mounjaro,
Yeah.
trade name.
Yeah.
Without getting too scientific, how in essence does it actually work? Is it just an appetite suppressant?
So it mimics, the GLP-1 is glucagon-like peptide. So it mimics that particular peptide. And what that does, it has 2 effects. So one is, yes, it suppresses the appetite, so it makes you feel fuller for longer. And it communicates with your nervous system to say, I'm full and I don't need food. But it also slows gastric emptying. So it slows the passage of food through the gastric system. And now what we're seeing is, like Mounjaro is actually triple action. So it works on it mimics other hormones as well, which are all linked in that system. So they will keep coming up with pills that will, could potentially have some of the same physiological effects as exercise. But what they'll never come up with a pill for is all the other things that exercise does for people. The mental health benefits are number 1 for me in terms of why should people exercise alongside the GLP-1s. The vast majority of people living with obesity have mental health issues of some description, whether that's just because they've experienced discrimination and bias, or because they've lived with a long-term health condition for so long, they often experience low mood, depression, anxiety, etc. Yeah.
I saw studies that the GLP-1 drugs actually also stop you from being addicted to gambling, as well as being addicted to nicotine.
Yes.
So not only the food basis, which is both mental health issues, right? The gambling addiction and the nicotine addiction, and I'm sure other drug addictions are very much a mental health issue.
Yeah.
So like the gym, they
Yep.
also help you to, obviously if you are in the gym, you're unlikely to be smoking, but likewise, if you're on GLP-1, you are going to...
I know a lot of smokers who go to the gym because they think going to the gym
Can you think
is
about it,
going to
John?
save them from their first smoking. Anyway, let's not get off track. But yes, so there are potential mental health benefits of these drugs for sure. And yes, what they do, they don't cure addiction, but they can reduce cravings across a number of different behaviours. So instead of, you're not craving food, you're also not craving alcohol, cigarettes, the buzz of gambling, etc. But the social experience of exercise as well is the other area I would say where we've got a lot of a lot to offer that isn't going to be taken over by drugs, and the cardiometabolic benefits and the health benefits that you get from the drugs will disappear when you come off the drugs. If you exercise, you will continue to reap those benefits. So, that's what I mean in terms of missed opportunities. Let's not be a one-story, sort of offer. Let's talk about the wider benefits. And I always quote this because it's really important to remember, which is someone living with obesity who is regularly physically active, meets the physical activity guidelines, their health risks are drastically reduced, even if they continue to live with obesity for the rest of their life. So exercise in the absence of weight loss is still hugely beneficial. And then, because I want to obviously give John his time to speak, one of my aspirations, which comes off the back of that conversation, which is I think we need to shift the whole conversation away from weight and towards health, because we've seen the drugs have wider health benefits. We know exercise has wider health benefits. Why are we even talking about weight anymore? We need to shift these perceptions that taking the drugs is the easy option, because it's definitely not. And you speak to any user, they'll tell you they've been through hell and back on the drugs, but it's usually been worth it. And we need to have a long-term vision for how we support these users that in an ideal world would start before they start taking the drugs, so we can prepare them for the side effects. So where currently operators are saying, oh, I've lost members because they didn't tell me they were going to go on the drug, they just left and they started taking the drugs. We need to create an environment where people feel comfortable to go into the gym and say, hey, I was thinking about doing the jabs, what do you think? I think it's a great idea if it works for you, and this is how we can support you through the journey. And then we really need to support people to find physical activity, behaviours, activities, and dietary plans that work for them in the long term, so when they come off the drugs, they don't get the weight rebound, and they have coping mechanisms for when the food noise comes back. John.
I've obviously taken Mounjaro. That was the drug that I chose to use. Did it for several reasons. Obviously, I work in the industry, big guy, getting old, and a few of my friends have died recently in the last 12 months, and it's kind of a shot across your bow about your health and well-being and stuff. And you start to think about your health a little bit more as you get older. You realise you're not infallible, you're not going to be here forever. And also, I speak to members. We've got quite a few older members in our gym, and I went around chatting to them and said, "So, how old are you?" And one of the guys, 87. To look at him, you'd think 60 at most. And I thought, all right. I said, so why do you train? And he goes, well, I don't train to live longer, although he is living longer, clearly. He said, I do it so I can live better. And that really resonated with me, the living better. Because I'm ex-military. I joined the RAF in my early 20s as a physical training instructor. I worked in the fitness industry from 17 years old. So that's 40 years I've worked in the fitness industry, so I'm getting old now. I was 88 kilos when I joined the RAF. I've got a picture of me on my phone somewhere. I should have sent it to you, really.
Yeah.
Lean, strong. I was still big, strong. I've got a neck like a tree trunk even then. And then I gradually put on weight, and I used to play lots of sports, because one of the things as a physical training instructor in the RAF, you have to be very sporty. And then I chose to go down the route of one particular sport so I could specialise in it, because you just can't do everything if you want to achieve it. So rugby player, no surprise there, right? So I was a rugby player, and then I was a prop forward when I was a kid, because I was always bigger than the rest. And then as I got older and taller, I went into the back row, which is really athletic, kind of position, fast. And then I played at that position. I thought I want to aspire to play at a higher level. So I moved into the front row, and if you know anything about rugby, front row are big, strong guys. And the game had changed when I went into that position. They became athletic, big guys. They weren't just fat blokes. So at that time, I was running around, big, strong. I was only saying to somebody earlier, I was 15.5 stone at that period when I moved positions, and I was trying to put weight on in a big way. I reckon I was probably in about the 6, 7, maybe even the 8,000 calorie zone at that stage as that kind of man, because I really desperately had to. But I was running 75 miles a week because I was teaching that in the military and trying to put weight on. So I upped my calorie intake. I then gained size, and you gradually do it, and I eventually got to my target weight of about 18 odd stone, and I sat there for years, and then I put a bit more weight. As you do, as you get older, and I got to the 20 stone. It was interesting. I had a conversation with somebody last night about this. They said the first 2 stone that they put on, they were really conscious about. and they felt really bad about it. But after that first 2 stone, the next lot of weight gain didn't bother them. It just happened. It just tumbled on. And I played rugby. I've been retired for a year now officially as a vet, but I'm intending to play again in Rennes next year because I've lost some weight. But I've played all the way through as prop forward. I played semi-pro, played some of the top players in my position in the country throughout that period, represented the Air Force and stuff. And you just have to be big and strong. It's just part and parcel of that position. So I gradually gained the weight, and I just carried on putting on, and I eventually got to 24 stone. I'm a 6 foot man, and that's a lot of weight for a 6 foot man. And what I started to realise was it was affecting my life in the fact that tying my shoelaces was really hard. You know, fundamental things, reaching behind my head, reaching behind my back, there's things you have to do, reaching behind your back, you have to do every day that are quite personal. And when you can't do it and you have to change, and you've been doing it that way for 50 years, they become, it's difficult. It's all sorts of things, you know. I've got a wardrobe with about 8 sets of clothing of different sizes, and it's really good now because I'm actually in reverse. I've got an end of the wardrobe I don't wear anymore because they're too big, and I'm now going the other way and I'll get back to the stuff. So, which has been an interesting thing. Belts. I actually ring my wife the other day and say, "Can you bring in that belt from the drawer because the one I've got is too big." You know, and stuff like that, and that's quite nice. But I started doing it fundamentally, taking the Manjaro because I had a shot across the bowels. And then I'd heard about it. And the other thing is I did a course 18 months ago for diabetes, to become a diabetes practitioner, exercise practitioner. And obviously Wegovy and Manjaro being used for that particular group before it came out as a fat loss drug to the general public, a weight loss drug, sorry, not fat loss drug. So I'd heard about it, but it was only beginning to that group at the time, wasn't it? I think when it first came out. And then obviously if you're not stupid, you realise that all these celebs have been using it for the last 4 or 5 years because they suddenly got a load of weight gain, didn't they? Weight loss from somewhere, and they certainly weren't going to the gym, I don't think. So I was aware of it, and then I'd heard about it. And I had a couple of members, and I've got a couple of members that come in regularly, and they've been fighting the fight, but they weren't getting where they want. And I bumped into one guy who's my age, and I bumped into him in the gym, and he'd lost a load of weight. And I said to him, "You're looking really well." And he says, "Yeah, I've just come back to the gym. I've lost 3.5 stone." I said, "Oh, you done that?" He said, "No, I'll take a Manjaro." I said, "How have you found it?" He said to me. I said, "Great." I said, "I'm thinking about it." He said, "I'll give you a discount code." So that's how it generally happens. So he gave me a discount code, and I went with Medi, whatever they are, Medi something, and I ordered mine, and I was on it. And the process was interesting because you fill out your things, you have to send them a photograph. And this is quite important, the photograph thing and the filling out and putting your weight, because you put the weight in. You know, you can write whatever you like. And the picture, as a bloke, I could stick my belly out a bit like that, because all it is, you could put a photograph on there from 3 years ago when you were at your heaviest. You know, you could be pregnant. You wouldn't know any different. So I filled that out, and I said, "Oh, go to the doctor, and they'll sanction it half an hour later, come back, you've got it. So it'll come in the post, pay my money and all of that." I think it was about, because you start on 2.5, and then it goes up in 2.5, 5, 7.5, 10, 12 and a half, 15, I think. 15 is about the top, isn't it? Yeah. So I went 2.5, I then went 5, and then the guy that had introduced me to it, he had come off it and he had a one, and he said, "Do you want it?" So he gave it me, so I got that for free, which is always good. And then when I went back to my supplier, they said I had to go back down. So I give them their credit, they made me go back down. So I went back down, so I went 2.5, 5, back down to 2.5, back up to 5, then up to 7.5, and then the price changes were coming in. So like everybody, you're now trying to order to beat the price rise, because it's gone from it was £147, yeah, and it's gone up to 260 for the dose that I use now. So I've set myself with this, and I'm also very good friends with Rob Handy, who we all know, and me and Rob have been doing different things for trying to weight loss, because we're both big guys, and we said, and I mentioned to him about this, and we'd had a discussion, said to Rob, should we give it a go, do it together? So me and Rob have been messing each other every day, and pictures of our food and all of that, and we've been doing it together. Rob's actually on a considerably higher dose than I am. I've stayed, and we went to see a professor about this a few months ago and had a discussion, and that I think what he was saying, there's a zone which Manjaro particularly works best in, and it's actually the lower doses. It was 5 is about the optimal, I believe, and he says if you can stay around the 5, because you obviously the way it works and stuff like that, you'll get the best results at 5. But obviously lots of people just climb, get to the 15s, and they then start to struggle, and then it's how do you come off it. So I've never gone higher than 7.5, so it's not costing as much. It's still 260 quid at 7.5. You start getting up at the others, it's significantly higher. And now there's other drugs coming on the market, which we mentioned, which are all significantly cheaper. There's a big black market, there's fakes all over the place, and stuff like that, so you've got to be really careful. So your members, obviously if it's price driven, they're going to go out and get fakes. Yeah, and they could be putting all sorts in their bodies. We know what the drug market's like, full stop. We're all sensible. So you've got people putting stuff in their bodies, not even the real drug. You know, it could be deadly. You don't know where it's made. So I think as a fitness professional myself, you know, it's on me if somebody's asking about it to at least direct them to a recognised supplier in the process, so they're actually getting the real drug. You know,
260. How long is that lasting?
That's a 4. It's a 4 doses. It's 4 doses in a pen. Shall I tell them the other one bit about it? Right. So
when you've got something which is on your club, you can use it as a great sales tactic. Can't you? You're paying that for that. Yeah. We can save your life. You can, and I'll kind of come on to that. Is that once a week or?
So you take it once a week, and it's 4 doses in a pen. However, at the top of the pen, there's about this much space, which doesn't come out of it. And it doesn't, because the way the mechanism, the pen works on a twisted motion, you set it to 1, and then it presses to a certain amount, and that puts in the amount that you require, the correct amount. But at the end of the pen is about this much, which is about the equivalent of a single dose, roughly. And so you got all your pens, and you've got this dose that's still in there that you've paid for. So it doesn't take long, does it, for everybody to go, oh, I'll get a diabetes needle, whip it out, and you get a 5th dose.
So you're 260 you're betting?
Yeah.
How is that a month's worth, for example?
Yeah, that'd be 4 doses, so 28 days worth. But what I'm saying is you could get out this extra bit, and you can get a 5th dose. Because I'll tell you the truth about it, I'm not going to lie, because I've been there and I've done it. What happens is when you first take it, it's quite strong, and the effects are very, very, and I'll talk about that in a second, but you kind of, I mean, it's probably like any addiction and taking medication, you kind of think that it wears off. That's why people step up to the next level, to the next dosage. So what you find, what me and Rob were doing is we were taking our weekly dose, same day, same time, every week. And then when we got the 4th dose, and this magic dose, or whatever you want to call it, okay, we were going, right, we'll take our 4th dose earlier, and then we'll take our 5th dose, so we'll get a bit of an extra shot, and then we'll order it. Because you have to order 10 days in advance to get your next one. It comes in an ice pack and everything like that. So we were kind of getting this extra dose in anyway, and I think that's pretty standard practice for most people that are doing it, this magic dose. You get on Google or YouTube or whatever, and it shows you how to do it. It's not, you know. Anyway, so did that. But what I would say about the drug is that for somebody that's been overweight and large, is for me that food addiction is like no other addiction. And it's really hard. I think in our industry, we need to understand this in our industry, because 90% of our industry are all fit, slim people, so they've never had this feeling. And we've got to be really careful, because I've had it. I've experienced it from people in my own industry looking at me going, you're weak, you're not determined. You know, they look at me like I'm an antichrist because I've engaged with this. But they've never had food noise. And it's a voice in the back of your head that's constantly going, eat, eat, eat. And it is there, it's there, it's there. It's like, you know, I don't gamble, never gambled. And I've got strength of character to never gamble. It doesn't interest me in any way, shape or form. I've never taken A-class drugs, doesn't interest me in any way, shape or form. Yes, I have a beer, but I drink when I want to drink. I don't drink at home. You know, the pub is for me to drink in. Yeah, and any other addiction. I have smoked and I vape now, but it's more of a stress release for me. But I was always what you call a social smoker, did it at the pub, and I could give up like that. You know, so I've got strength of character to do that. But food, couldn't give up food. And the thing is, smoking, alcohol, drugs, all of those, you don't need them to live. You absolutely don't need them. So when you stop, because it's really easy to go stop and not do it, because you know when you do it. But food, you have to have food. Doesn't matter what you're doing, you still have to eat. And the thing is, you're trying to cut down on the thing. You're trying to cut down on the substance that's giving you the problems, but you've still got to eat it. You've still got to have it. So how do you control that urge when you're still having it?
Yeah. It's really important. It's a great place to finish, John.
Yeah.
I just
No, sorry. I
don't want to cut you off.
But I think
It's a
that's
great point,
the
but it's a
thing.
really good point, and that is it. If you haven't experienced it, you know, and some of you may have, many of you may not have, but if you haven't, you won't understand what a driver that is, and how food influences people, and how difficult it is, and why the eat less, move more message doesn't work for a good chunk of people. So we said we wanted to get your perspective as well. So good news, guys, you get to get your phones out. If you've been suffering with, oh my God, what's going on? Please get your phone out, and we're going to ask you 3 questions to get your perspective, because this is all building our knowledge base, so we can start thinking about, is a framework going to be useful? And if it is, what do you need from it? So hopefully that will work.
Information comes in now. We don't know what you put into the information.
Oh yeah, we don't know whose answers is
by the way.
whose. So
please, the more people that involve and the more people that give us an answer, there isn't a right and wrong answer. It's your opinion. That's the important thing to know.
It's working. Look, there's numbers at the top. Yay!
We may have had technical issues.
I think they're very sort of simple questions. You know, do you believe overall that it could have a positive or negative impact on gym services and membership numbers? So thank you if you've answered that already. Now we press the button and see what happens. Hey, okay. So top answer, positive effect, but good chunk, also saying probably neutral or negative. So thank you for that. There's no right or wrong answer. Obviously, we're just literally gathering this, your opinions. So then this is about staff knowledge and training, because this was also flagged up in the live discussions we've had. So if you are a member of staff, how knowledgeable do you feel? If you have staff that you're working with, how knowledgeable do you feel that they are in relation to training people using GLP-1s, supporting them more broadly? Give you a minute to answer that.
It's the reason that I'm leading the thing, because I've done it.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, so 70% not very knowledgeable, which again, as we said, is understandable given how new it is and how rapidly evolving it is. But clearly if we want to support people now, they need to have the knowledge that we can give them at this point in time. So that's super helpful, thank you. And last question for the Slido, how confident are you at communicating what your facility can offer? So this was a discussion that we had where you've got, knowledgeable, experienced people like John saying, I know I can help, but we know there's a stigma around it, we know people aren't revealing it, so how do we actually get out there and communicate to a potential audience what we can offer as a facility? See if it gets to 10, that's what we had last time. So. Yeah, awesome, thank you so much. Okay.
Quite consistency.
Yeah, so that's pretty high, that's pretty good. So that's great. And like I said, I think with independence, you're experts at knowing your local community, and they know you, and you've probably built a really good level of trust and rapport already. So thank you for that. So we wanted to just finish off with a more sort of open chat. We're coming to this is the last slides, this is the end of the session. Actually, what I will do in case any of you need to rush off is I put that on. If anyone wants to scan that QR code for the free GLP-1 practical guide for operators, which I wrote for Twin Labs. It's free to download, so have a quick look. It's deactivated. That's rude, isn't it? I'll have a word with them. Get in touch with me, I can send you a copy.
Yes.
One thing I thought was very interesting, thank you, John, for being so honest.
Yeah.
You corrected yourself when you said fat loss and then you said weight loss. And I agree with your first statement.
Yes.
Because you lose muscle mass, bone density, or dehydrate, that's all detriment to your health. And the TANITA scales that we use, looking at very better ones, we always talk about health and body composition. I think this is where the diet industry need to be re-educated, people like yourself, I think. Because the first thing they do when you go to them is they give you a target weight. It's all about weight loss on scales every week, and that's completely wrong information, as well as telling things like you can eat unlimited things. I've always said to people, it's everything in moderation, be as active as you can, resistance training, 80 kilometers at a time, you eat relatively healthy, you can have a few treats a couple of times a week, but it's not every day, that's about that. And I leave people in control of that, so the better they behave, the better their results will be, and we manage that. But I was interested that you corrected yourself, because people have the misconception they need to lose weight, they don't. We can be brutally honest and use the big fat moles and muscle moles, and we say it's body fat that you need to lose. I think that's part of the education process us in gyms should be given to our members. Because I get people coming and say, I need to lose 4 stone and drop 2 dress size, and they don't actually need to lose 4 stone, but half or less. And I said you will also build muscle and strength in your bone density, which is good weight, so one offsets the other. So your total change in weight is actually nowhere near as significant as what you thought it would be. But you're perhaps back in the clothing size of what you're wearing that different belt. For me, whatever you wear at that point is irrelevant. You're much healthier, and you should be happy with that weight.
The irony of weight loss, when we take it as weight loss, is you can lose weight but get fatter. Yeah,
Yes.
That's the thing, and people, the Joe average doesn't understand that they're losing weight, they think they're getting fitter and healthier, they're not. As a business, we don't have scales around our gym. We took that a long time ago. We try and move people away from that perception and that thing. Our scales, we have TANITA ones, full body scales. We link it with eGym. They're in a locked room. It's done under supervision. They don't do it themselves. We explain it. We do the body composition, explain body fat to muscle mass. I mean, when I was 154 kilos, I was just short of 100 kilos of lean muscle mass as well. That's heavier than most people are. And then all the rest of the stuff I had on top of that. So when I looked at my weight loss journey and obviously this loss of lean muscle mass that you can have if you don't train, you don't necessarily do get lean muscle mass loss. If you train and you take enough protein and other things and hydrate properly.
Well, again, also, it comes
The
back, we
studies
don't
are
have
there.
the evidence. We
Yeah.
don't have the evidence. We don't know if you do resistance training and eat a whole bunch of protein while you take these drugs, you will attenuate that muscle loss. And we can't scare people into this. We can't say your bones will crumble into dust if you don't train while you take GLP-1s. We have to meet them where they're at.
Does TANITA have any data on that? Because you would be in a prime position to have people take, I use GLP-1s, and what is the actual composition?
Yes. Short answer, no. Longer answer, work in progress, following on from sessions like this.
Yeah.
We want gym members that are on these drugs, and if we get them on the scales, then that could help you to build a bigger bank.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
This
what
is
we
also
need. Yeah.
precedent in the US, especially with lawsuits galore against the Zen and things like that. And people want that quick fix, don't they? So we hear a lot of the negative side of it. So we hear a very one-sided when you go online. So it's interesting.
What's the general, you've been through it, what's the general advice we should give? I've got at least half a dozen, I know are on it. What is the advice we give around these things? Because should they still have their 3 main meals a day, etc.? What should we generally say to them about their eating habits anyway?
I mean, clinical guidance is...
It's a whole session.
Yeah, guidance just says...
What should I keep? I'm on Manjaro. What do I eat?
Yeah. So the clinical guidance is the usual nutritional guidance, which is eat well plate. Yeah, so you've got to eat this much, this proportion should be high whole grain carbs, this proportion should be lean protein, and you should aim for a 500 calorie deficit. Now, John talks about he used to eat 5,000 odd, and then he could barely eat 2,000 odd. That's quite a bigger deficit. Realistically, as a health psychologist, what I would say is, try and do the basics well. So hydrate. John also talks about you often don't feel as thirsty. So stay hydrated. Try and stick as close to general nutritional guidelines as possible. If you can eat a lot of protein, if you can tolerate that, eat it. But most people, when they experience the side effects, tend towards actually bland foods and foods that are lower in fats and sugars, because those ones tend to exacerbate the side effects. So there's almost a default positive effect on nutrition, but we are of course hearing anecdotally of people who are just eating what they used to eat, which might not have been the healthiest, just eating less of it. So they're clearly not getting all the nutrients they need, and that is an issue. And again, a nutritionist would probably advise appropriate supplementation during that phase. I'm not a nutritionist, so I can't advise. But
and I think that's the thing, is that you're getting people that are overweight, never doing the sports stuff, and then they take the drug, and they're eating less of the same. They're not doing any change within that process, and that's the thing. As a fitness professional, you can give guidance. We're not going to write a nutritional plan.
No.
You know, you can explain to what fats, carbohydrates, proteins, and what proportions you should, as a general healthy person, should be having, and that's what you want them to do to move away. Because I would suggest, if you've got severely overweight, or a person that's considered to be overweight, they're heavily laden with carbs on there. You know, my experience is most are taking in too many carbs, and they're taking in, you know, processed carbs as a thing. So obviously, if you can move, I found personally that I had to move away from root vegetables. I found potatoes, rice, pasta are all my favourite foods. Bread, you know, I live and die for those foods. Could eat them by the bucketful. I find them hard to eat now. Like chips, I could have chips.
Do you crave more fibrous food like?
No, I mean it was interesting because I moved away from. I made a conscious decision. I would eat more fruit. I would eat more salad. I would eat more vegetables that grew above the ground. I cut back on my potatoes. I love pasta. I very rarely have it now. And I find I desire it less. It's really strange, and I haven't done that deliberately. I don't eat pizzas or anything like that anymore. So I tend to, I eat a lot of chicken, I eat a lot of steak. Steak, thankfully, is one of my favourite foods. So I eat steak, salad, and then I eat a lot of boiled eggs now and stuff like that. You know, yeah, hard-boiled eggs, and that's what I tend to eat.
Do you think, apart from the nutrition, we should be looking at more behaviour change, more habit
well,
change?
yeah, and this is what I was going to come back to is you know, I understand the question, it's a very valid question, and I understand, especially with fitness professionals, how we are trained, we're always seeking, oh, but what should I program for people? You know, what should I advise people? Because that's how we're trained to be supportive. Whereas actually, what users need while they're on the treatment is a lot of, like I said, sort of support to get through the sticky parts, the hard parts, which are, I feel dreadful, I feel tired, They need reassurance that actually this is a temporary period, and if they do eat some crappy food, or they're not getting their 5 a day for a week because they feel like they're going to vomit, in the long term it's not a problem. What we want to do is prepare them for the rest of their life. So while they're going through that phase, I would say let's worry less about what they're eating then and start preparing them for what they're going to eat in the future, which is the good fundamental nutrition guidelines. And the same with physical activity. So when they're in a good place where they're willing to try new things, let's get them out there trying new things and build intrinsic motivation for activity.
Yeah, I was talking more about habits.
Yeah.
Behaviour change.
Yes.
Rather than
Well, diet and physical activity are behaviours, that's what I was saying.
Yeah, taking more all the way of what Guy mentioned yesterday in terms of other activities that doesn't necessarily mean exercise, but are physical activities.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Is we need to give them help them find activities that they enjoy instead of prescribing them. This is what you should be doing.
Yes.
You know, that's no good for these people. What they need is let me get out in a safe environment where I can try things that when the weight is gone, I want to continue because they give me some intrinsic motivations. That I was answering your question. It's about if this is something that has something going for me that isn't about weight, I'm going to keep doing it. If I'm only, and we see this all the time in gyms, forget GLP-1s. People we've linked weight and exercise too closely, not us, this sector necessarily, the society. So people think once I've lost weight, I can stop exercising. It's not true. So yeah, sorry.
It's because obviously I was big, I was strong, so I was still lifting weights. I'm never big. I do cardio. But when I...
He said it's like resentful.
Oh! It hurts me. Unless it's chasing a rugby ball, I ain't doing it. You know what I mean? But when I obviously, because that calorie was way above what I should be cutting down it, but it does affect, even at the 2.5, the 5 milligrams, you lose the food noise. You just don't feel, and like before, I used to feel hungry. I would get hunger pains. You know, I would get that taste in my mouth go, you need food. I never got that. I never had a voice saying, you need food. So I didn't desire food. So that 2,000 calories I was taking, I would have to force myself to eat that because I knew I had to eat. And then when I did eat it, it was hard work to eat that because you feel full. And you actually, you know, nausea and diarrhea are the two most common side effects I think I've come across. I never suffered from those. I suffered from being full. I got a metallic taste in my mouth for the first few months. That was quite disconcerting. You know, just walking around feeling like you got metal in your mouth all the time, like you just had a filling. Really strange. And then constipation one's really interesting because I personally don't think you get constipation. I think when you eat a lot, you poo a lot. And then when you eat less, you poo significantly less. You know, for me, that's what I found. Oh, it's great. I'm not going to the toilet 3-4 times a day. I'm now going once a day like a normal person. You know, so...
Yeah, I mean, it is a documented side effect.
I know it is.
It's actually one of the most common reasons people give it up because they get constipation for 5 days and they can't, yeah.
You mentioned about vertical dizziness as a side effect because I have a client who's
Oh, okay. It's not the most common one I've seen, and almost every drug says it can cause dizziness. If you look, so it'll be listed under the less frequent ones, I'm sure. I very rarely see a drug that doesn't have that listed. You know, but also there are other things that might be going on.
He hasn't mentioned like John. He hasn't mentioned about any side effects.
Yeah. And then it could be low blood sugar, dehydration, He needs to obviously talk to his healthcare professional and talk about that.
Is there any people get addicted to this?
There's no evidence that it's physiologically or biologically addictive, but you know, people will. One of the genuine things that we see in GLP users is fear of not being able to get the drug. So it's not addictive in a biological sense, but in a psychological sense it is because it's given them this new life and this new hope. They have a genuine fear of what if I can no longer afford it, what if my doctor stops prescribing it to me, and they're experiencing that while they're on the drug.
I mean, is it that once you start taking it, does it resort back to where you was before? Or?
The food noise will come back, yeah, and as I said, the majority of people will currently will regain the weight, but I think we can help them for that to not happen.
Can I ask, is it Lou?
Yes.
Lou.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, the gentleman?
John?
John, sorry. John, if you plan to reduce your dosage?
Yeah, so I've gone up to 7.5. I'm about to take my last dose on Saturday and I'm going to change the drug that I'm taking and hopefully it'll be smaller. But I couldn't exercise at the very beginning. I just didn't have the physical capability to do that, to go in the gym weight train. And I lifted I could lift heavy, you know, so I couldn't have done that.
Are you a gym owner?
As a gym owner, yeah. So I walked from the very beginning, so that was my exercise. It's still exercise at the end of the day. It was great for me mentally. It was good for me to spend time with my wife, actually walk the dogs, and that's what we're looking to do with our implementation of this membership, is to get people doing steps, you know, to get in the habit of doing some exercise. It doesn't matter what the exercise is, whether it's gardening, walking, whatever. And then ultimately, because you're obviously in calorie deficit, you know, and once that, as you come down to lose weight, your deficit gets smaller and smaller. You get to a balance, won't you? When you're at that, I've got 18 kilograms more to lose. 18? Yeah, I was 155 and I want to get to 110. Right. However, I've lost 4.5, so 30, approximately 30 kilograms. Yeah. So, and I'm happy with the way it's going, but I'm also very conscious. We're an aesthetic business as well, and we're all very conscious about the way we look. And I've seen plenty of it with just normal weight loss over the years, with people getting loose skin and all that sort of stuff. I want to make sure as I step down that I'm not getting loose skin, and then have to have surgery for that. I've got a few clients that are in that journey now. They were morbidly obese. My visceral fat was poor. That was one of the other reasons. Shock cross bowel, you need to lose that. So I held it around the belly in particular. And I'm now at that stage where I'm judging it week by week. Right, am I starting to get loose fat, loose skin, and that kind of stuff? And if I get to that stage where I get loose skin, I'll stop, because I'm not willing to have that payoff for it. Yeah, well, there's all sorts of other things, and you know.
But I think thinking about like whether you stay on it or not, which is a really good question. You know, definitely there's going to be a group of people who are going to need this for the rest of their lives. They won't be able to keep the weight off, and they'll just yo-yo, and that'll be worse for them from a health perspective. So if you think of it like statins, you know, you don't give someone some statins, you know, their metrics get better and then you take them off them. They stay on statins forever. So there'll be a group of people for whom it will be a lifelong thing. And as you say, a small maintenance dose every month, great, works for them. You know, for others it will be, let's lose the weight and then try and maintain it with lifestyle. You know, and then there's the abuse factor as well. So really conscious of time. I'm sure you all want to get on the road. I'm happy to stay and chat as long as you like. Thank you so much for coming. If you didn't, if that code doesn't work, I apologise. You can